So Conor Benn defeats Chris Eubank Jr. by unanimous decision in their rematch. And for me, this fight truly demonstrated a fighter who was energetic, a fighter who had a lot in the tank, a younger fighter, and a fighter who still had the speed and the zip and the elasticity, versus another fighter who was weight drained, was past their best, and also, in my opinion, he seemed to not have the same fight in him. And I think that Chris Eubank Jr., to me, in the first fight, did not look right. A little bit reminiscent to David Haye when he fought Tony Bellew the first time. He wasn't past his best in the sense that he was absolutely shot to pieces in the first Tony Bellew fight. But you could see that he wasn't the same fighter of old. And in the rematch, he was noticeably worse. Now, don't get me mixed up here. It's a different situation in the sense that David Haye suffered injuries in both fights, but before the injury, you could tell that David Haye was past his best, but still had more in the tank than in the second fight. Second fight, David Haye just looked shot to pieces right from the get-go. And so returning back to this fight, Conor Benn versus Chris Eubank Jr. 2, and then rewinding it to their first fight just for a moment, Chris Eubank Jr., he looked past his best in the first fight. His punches looked like they were being forced. They looked like there was no snap on the punches. And he looked like he was operating in slow motion, but he still had enough that he was able to get the victory against Conor Benn the first time. But then he took a lot of punishment in that fight. Then fast forward to their rematch, Chris Eubank Jr. had nothing left. I think he left it all in the first fight. And this is a combination of weight. This is a combination of him being past his best. And also, I think mentally, he had to call on a lot in the first fight. And I don't think he had it in the second fight. In this fight here, there were 2 times noticeably where Chris Eubank Jr. looked at the clock to see how long was left. That, to me, is a fighter just trying to get through the fight. There was one time, I think in round 8, he was looking at the clock. And then in round 12, obviously, when he got knocked down for the second time, I believe he looked at the clock. So for me, Chris Eubank Jr. past his best. He didn't really get going in the fight. You know, the fight itself, Chris Eubank Jr. on the back foot, giving up the real estate. Conor Benn coming forward in a more measured way than the first fight. But Chris Eubank Jr., no snap on his punches, and his jab was ineffective, and his punches just looked to have no power in them whatsoever. And Chris Eubank Jr.'s reflexes were not there. Chris Eubank Jr. at his best, in his peak years, was a fighter who had very fast combinations, fast twitch muscle fibers, and was a guy who would want to walk you into shots. But now he's lost the elasticity, the fast twitch muscle fibers, and the speed. And what you have now is a fighter who, he might have some basic fundamentals, but that doesn't compensate for what was lost in terms of his physical attributes. And so now there's no fast combinations that you're going to walk onto if you walk him down. And I also think his punch resistance is deteriorating as well. So he lost to a guy who's naturally a lot smaller than him. Now, the credit you can give to Conor Benn is limited, but at the same time, he beat a guy who's a lot bigger than him. He beat a guy who's a lot more experienced than him, and he did make some technical adjustments. He was a lot more measured. He was setting things up with the jab. working the body to make Chris Eubank Jr. think, is he going to throw a body shot or is he going to throw a head shot? And I think that he was, you know, he was mixing his stances up as well. He was fighting tall. He was fighting from a crouch sometimes. He was changing levels with his stance. And so I think that he definitely made some technical adjustments, you know. So I think that Chris Eubank Jr., he definitely is past his best. I don't think there's anyone who can deny that at this stage. And I think that this was one fight too many. I think Conor Benn, where he goes from here, he says he wants to go back down to 147. I think that that's going to be a hard ask, because many fighters typically struggle when they've gone up in weight. To go back down in weight is typically a struggle. So maybe he'll want to take some mid-level fights to see how he is at that weight when he goes back down. Chris Eubank Jr., his stock has really dropped. I think that he may be better off retiring, but if they want to go for a third fight, technically it's 1-1. I don't see any issue with them having a third fight. People seem to be dismissing that. Conor Benn himself was dismissing it, saying that the feud is over, or, you know, it's over now. But at the end of the day, it is 1-1. So let's see if Chris Eubank Jr. wants that rematch. If he does, I would expect Conor Benn to win, but I would say Chris Eubank Jr. would have to put his foot down and say, look, this has got to be either 160 with no catch weight or 168. And maybe that might change things a bit. But Chris Eubank Jr., I think he's in his mid to late 30s now. So, you know, fighters can get old overnight. And for me, it wasn't overnight, but the fight before, you know, he didn't look great in the first fight. And in the second fight, he looked completely shot. I think that the Chris Eubank Jr. of old, at his peak of his powers, would have beaten the Conor Benn that was in front of him last night. Chris Eubank Jr. said that there were some struggles that he was going through, you know, leading up to this fight. So if he elaborates, he may not, then we may know more. But as it stands, I think Chris Eubank Jr. is past his best. I think Conor Benn, his trajectory is limited based on what I saw last night and what I know of Conor Benn. I think he would struggle to... I think he could win a world title at 147, but I think that's not based on 147. Yeah, I think that's more based on 147 not being a stacked division at this time. But if Conor Benn decided to fight at middleweight, which I don't think he will, I think that he would have a very, very hard ask. It'll be a very hard ask for him to do something. Although it was in front of the lights and he's Conor Benn, and, you know, in terms of people know who he is, in boxing terms, Conor Benn is not proven at 160 at all. And there are fighters that people don't know of that would probably beat Conor Benn quite handily. And even at 147, I think that that's his best bet. If he can make the weight, you know, grab a world title so no one can ever take that away from you. But I think that Conor Benn's trajectory in real terms is still limited. Let me know what you think about this. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, hit the notification bell so you get a notification when I make a new video. If you appreciate my work and want to leave a donation, there's a link for that in the description. With that, enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you on the next one.